Did another Ravens offensive weapon just step forward for FFPC players? What are the ripple effects from Jamar Chase being out until potentially December? And did one rookie tight end just make his case for a Week 8 start? Plus, the 8th place team owner in the Football Guys Players Championship, Chris Lejawa, joins us to talk about the importance of locking up the Browns backfield during draft season, when the right time is to start J.D. McKissic, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob, and greetings and salutations to all the Bulkaholics, all the Farrelliacs tuning in this evening. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, one Farrell Elliott. Hey, a reminder, play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. If you have not done it, we might be starting to put together a segment on this show every week to give you the commission's input, my input on what the premium optimal lineup is for the FFPC Weekly Challenge. Why would we do this? Well, because you can win a 2023 FFPC main event entry if you play in the $200 10-team league where you're going to get a free entry in the next year's main event where you can win $1 million. And of course, if you don't want to play for that much, that's cool. You have a $35 entry, or you can do a $200 entry in the 30 or 100 team contest with classic or slim formats. You want to play with the kickers and defenses, you can. You want to play without the kickers and defenses, you can as well. But that's the biggest thing right now. Check that out, myffpc.com. In case you missed it on Tuesday night, watch the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown right here on this channel for myself and Jared Hines, a guy who is in contention for a $500,000 Football Guys Players Championship grand prize this year. Dude who's won several FFPC Football Guys and FFPC Dynasty League titles over the years. We chopped it up pretty good on Tuesday night, and you can check that out here or rotoviz.com/podcast. And remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Obviously, the better you guys do on that end, the better the content will be, and the more content we can put out on the FFPC YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's bring in the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, one J. Farrell Elliott. Farrell, good Friday evening to you. And I guess the question that everybody's wondering right now is Davante Adams going to play on Sunday? That's the biggest thing we want to know.
Oh, Balky, I did not know that there was a mystery about this. Bring me up to date on Davante's situation.
He missed practice this week, Wednesday and Thursday. I got to look to see if he practiced today. But he has been dealing with a mystery non-COVID, at least everything I've been told, non-COVID illness, right? And I would assume it's the flu. I mean, we're getting to that time of year where the seasons are changing, the temperature's changing, the climate, well, maybe not the climate, but everything's changing or whatever right now. So Davante Adams did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He is officially, with the illness, listed as questionable. Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network says he's dealing with a, quote, bad flu, which, I mean, you and I could press.
Worst kind.
That is the worst kind. You and I could press through that, but playing Sunday NFL football, I don't know. How concerned are you with Davante Adams right now, man?
I'm very concerned because I don't want to repeat of the Keenan Allen from this past week. I would rather you either play and understand that you're going to play well and then show up and be basically a decoy. Davante Adams is such a wonderful player. If he's on the field, you must play him. We say that about a lot of guys, but we have to play him. There are so many injuries and bye week, some stud players. The only two teams on bye this week, stud players, however, from the Chiefs and the Chargers won't be with us. There's a lot to there's a lot to weigh into that. Anyone who was wise enough to pick up Mac Hollins, and I take it Waller is coming back this weekend.
Sounds like it, yes.
Okay, so and I still like the Raiders even without their, for 1 week it's Johnny Allstaff picks up the responsibility and goes forward with it.
Devontae Adams, it sounds like he is going to be good to go.
Okay.
And bear in mind this too. If you're on the fence with him and like, oh, you want to play it safe or whatever, that the Adams game, the New Orleans and Las Vegas game is indeed a noon game, which you don't always get with those West Coast teams, but you get it this week. And keep this in mind too. No Marshawn Lattimore again for New Orleans this week. That could be huge for Devontae Adams.
Somebody, the training staff needs to get him a little bit of that Robitussin. That Robitussin will take care of everything, get him ready. A little Tussin. Tussin's what you're going to have in a situation like this.
Listen, if it works for Lil Wayne recreationally, it's going to work for Devontae Adams medically. So I'm down with that for sure. Right off the start of the show tonight, Hudson Kern-Reeve, the resident Ivy League professor of the FFPC and the HSFF Hour, wants to know for tight ends this week, if you had to make a choice, Darren Waller against said Saints, or would you go with Tyler Higbee, who is at home against the San Francisco 49ers, Farrell Elliott?
I love Hudson so much. I mean, you just show up at the dance with your date and he's already asking her to, for the first dance. You got to love that. Jump right in there. Okay, Waller or Higbee? Higbee seems to do well, and this was noted in one of the blurbs along the very beneficial FFPC chat area there, that he does well when he plays against the top competition, especially when the corners are playing against good cover corners. The quarterback is quick to check down and move through his progressions and find Higbee. So I would think this is a Higbee game coming up with what we're dealing here. I don't believe it or not. Hudson Kern-Reeve, the over-under on our beloved Raider quarterback Carr was 4,450 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood this year. And he's not on a pace to get it, largely because Josh Jacobs is having an unprecedented season for not only Josh Jacobs, but other NFL running backs. This is one of the better years, and I expect him to run through and all over the Saints this weekend. So I am going to Higbee.
Yeah, it's tough for me to listen. If the resident Raiders fan is going with Higbee, who am I to say it's Darren Waller this week? I can't do it. I have Kelsey in a few leagues this week, Farrell. Guess who my backup is? Tyler Higbee. So it's really difficult for me to say, it's gonna be Waller over Higbee. No, it's gonna be Higbee for me. Another situation, and we'll get into more of this later on with our guest who's coming up in just a little bit, Chris Lejawa. Chuba Hubbard, ankle problem. He's already been ruled out for the Falcons. This according to Adam Schefter. He did not practice all week. This is an injury he got against Tampa Bay this past week. And we saw Foreman and Hubbard both had pretty good games in week 7. And now you know that Hubbard will not be a part of that. You look at Carolina this week against Atlanta. Falcons defense is giving up the 5th highest expected points added per rush this season. Last week, 118 yards on just 15 carries against that vaunted Tampa Bay rush defense, which didn't look so great last night against Baltimore. But only 4 running backs last week had more rush yards after contact per attempt than Deontay Foreman. Farrell, if you have this guy, this is the best possible news that you could get that Hubbard is out. You got to fire up Foreman as your second running back, and you got to fire him up in either one of your flexes in the FFPC or your single flex in the KFFSC. Yeah,
and it made me think of our friend Alex Elkins from back in the middle of September, who drafted him rather highly, I think, and I hope he had the patience to be rewarded here as we move into week 8. This is and you talk about patience. It's 2017 since Foreman's been really looking forward to having a break. You could say he had a break last year when he got to fill in for Henry And he did very, very well, averaged 4.3 yards a carry. But he's carried the ball 250 times in a 6-year career. And you would have thought that things would have worked out better for him. And this, the Tennessee group that moved on to Atlanta brought him to Atlanta down there, and they jettisoned him out of there. So it's got a little bit of a grudge match for him as returning. He's a second-level runner, Balky. He was a guy that I remember at the Combine. The scouts just love to talk about how his 4.47 allowed him to run past linebackers, run past defensive backs. If you can get this player to the second level, you've got chances for big, big plays, and that's what we all love in the FFPC and fantasy football. Yes, get this player in here. He is I suspect that they will put in an extra tight end, try to block that edge rusher and get this guy out. If you can get past that defensive line in any way, oh, baby, you're sitting on some nice points. Now, you got to remember, he is playing for Carolina. And I don't know what the Carolina quarterback situation is. I think Baker Mayfield is still the number 2 quarterback on the team. I think it's going to be Walker this weekend. A lot of people were talking about Carolina beating Tampa and how they beat a quarterback that was a 4-string quarterback. But I'll tell you something about PJ Walker. He's competitive. He'll keep you in a game, and he's been, all 5'11" of him. He's a tough kid that played in the XFL, and he's earned his shots. Indianapolis cut him 4 times. So he's back and he's playing. So he's got guys that will compete around him and won't quit, and that's what you want. He's still playing for Carolina, but there's some guys that haven't played regularly that are trying to earn another year in the league that are on the field with Foreman. I like Foreman, and I like some of his teammates well enough to say you're going to get people around him that will help him achieve fantasy numbers.
2 things here from a non-fantasy standpoint. Number one, Deontay Foreman, a dude that I loved coming out of college, and then tears his Achilles, and you're like, his career's over. Yeah. He has been one of the first few guys that have really rebounded from a torn Achilles to come back to being not only fantasy relevant, but a dude that you should probably be starting this week, especially with no Clyde Edwards-Helaire, no Isaiah Pacheco, no Austin Eckler this week, right? No Breece Hall either. And then PJ Walker, Steve Wilkes, the interim coach for Carolina, already said, this was early this week. He's like, regardless of what Sam Darnold's doing, regardless of what Baker Mayfield's doing, PJ Walker is our starting quarterback. Now, Walker upset the Buccaneers last week, which maybe after last night is not looking like much of an upset anymore. I was hanging my hat on the Packers beating the Buccaneers earlier this season. Maybe that's not such a hat hanger game anymore. But Walker threw for 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, did not turn the ball over, and obviously made leaps and bounds improvements from week 6 to week 7. Not saying you should start PJ Walker. I'm just rooting for the guy. I'm rooting for Foreman as well. And we will see what happens in that Carolina game. Obviously, with them beating Tampa, they're riding a euphoric rise, as is the Baltimore Ravens, who went down to Florida last night, got the big win. And part of that reason was Isaiah Likely. He gets 7 targets in the game. Mark Andrews goes down. He gets 7 targets in the game, and 6 of them become catches. He goes for 77 yards and a touchdown. Mark Andrews out with a shoulder injury. According to John Harbaugh, it's not serious, so you could probably start Harbaugh, or don't start Harbaugh next week. You can probably start Andrews next week. But I look at this from the standpoint of Isaiah Likely. Farrell, you remember when we were talking about him in August, and he was climbing up draft board, and everybody was very excited about him from an FFPC standpoint. Now that he had this big game, and again, the large majority of it was without Andrews. Let's assume Andrews is ready to go the following week in week 9. What do you do with Likely in an FFPC tight end premium format? Does he sneak in as a flex, or does Andrews soak up so many targets that you can't really count on Likely, even though he put up this great performance on the road on Thursday?
Oh, we could almost have a whole show over this with Balky, so I'll try to be brief. Isaiah Likely is a new type of tight end. If you look around college football, you'll see a lot of players like this. Scouting has started referring to them as U or F style tight ends. They used to call them move tight ends, but that doesn't quite necessarily fit a guy who is about 6'4", 230 to 240, which is right where Likely is. Now, you love the athlete. You question, does he have the catching skills to play in the position? But he's very, very move talented. You saw that along the back of the end zone when he made the touchdown catch. So he is so different than Andrews as a tight end that it's hard to call them both a tight end. If you'll remember the game last night at halftime, the old quarterback Fitzpatrick said what they need to do is go to 3 tight ends. And that's what they did. Oliver and Boyle were on the field most of the time that Likely was having success. So I'll wrap this up by telling you that I think Likely can do a lot of things. I think he has the skill set to be a complete player, but he does not have the body. He's willing to engage on blocking, but he can't block like this team wants him to block. So if Andrews is on the field, Likely, unless he comes in lined up as a slot receiver, and then he's not the same player. You know, when he's in the slot receiving position, he has the similar skill set to a lot of slot receivers. So you lose your advantage with him there. I guess long story short, from a fantasy perspective, if you've got this player on your team and Andrews doesn't play, yes, you should probably start him. If Andrews does play, you shouldn't. But if this player is a free agent in your league, let somebody else spend the big bucks to get him on your roster, because it was a special situation last night playing against a defense with 4 of their starters missing. And when he had his success, he was having it against a defense that was gassed, playing almost twice the snaps of what the Baltimore defense was.
To reiterate, Farrell, what you're saying, and I think I agree with you here, do not break the bank for him this week, because he is not the type of for running backs, we're always looking for the guy behind the guy. Not necessarily, even in such a fantasy rich situation like the Baltimore Ravens tight end situation. You don't want to break the bank to try to get Likely on your team, because he likely would put up a lot of points if Andrews misses, right? This is not the type of guy you want to go all in on the waiver wire, even in the Football Guys Players Championship, even in the FFPC main event.
There are 2 different players playing what is called the same position, and one of them's got to be off the field for the other one to be successful, because it will be completely played differently. Now, I will say this. If you want to go into drafting next year and you like the idea of these athletic speed tight ends, go ahead and draft them, because if they're on the field, they're going to be used. It's like we know that they'll throw to Kelsey. We'll know that they throw to Andrews. We talked about how they often use Higbee more than not. But there's some teams where you run your tight end out and you don't get many targets. If an offense is committed to play this kind of tight end, go ahead and draft him, because he's going to be a big part of the passing pattern.
We have Chris Lejawa, the 8th place team owner in the Football Guys Players Championship, coming up. And I know we're late on this, but this is and we'll keep Chris on a little bit later for anybody who wants to pick his brain. 2 important things to get to before we get to Chris. Okay. Number 1, Jordan Renan was the first to report that Kadarius Toney, his trade to the Kansas City Chiefs this week, came after the brass with the Giants met with Toney about his hamstring. Now, I made this point on my terrestrial radio show this past week, Farrell. I was not convinced that this was a significant hamstring injury for Toney. I thought that there might be a disconnect between the new front office, the new coaching staff that's there, and the one and Toney, because he was not drafted by that staff that was in there. And now Toney went out on Twitter after the trade. He said, "My hamstrings are good. I'm ready to play." And the Giants, the Giants wanted to hold him back. Now, the Giants have a bye in week 9. The Chiefs have a bye this week. So you're obviously not playing Kadarius Toney this week. But the question remains, Farrell, what does the Toney trade do for Kansas, like for him in Kansas City? What does that do for him as a player? Also, what does it do for a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, who really was ascending as the go-to guy in Kansas City? Now, I know that, coming off, his first game coming up with Toney, with the Chiefs, you maybe don't want to play him. But what about the rest of the way? Is Toney the guy that could be, I don't want to say league winner, but a significant guy that's going to contribute to fantasy success down the stretch?
Yes, he's going to contribute to this team immediately. And Balky, looking back just very quickly, we've talked all season long about how a complete team includes the training staff. And,
Yes.
The training staff and this player are sideways. And perhaps there was a second opinion involved, which is players' rights through the CBA to get a second opinion about their hamstrings. Who knows? But they couldn't get on the same page. Now he goes to a place where he is going to be one of many stars, and I think it's going to allow Juju Smith-Schuster more room underneath. It may have an effect on how they use Marquez Valdes-Scantling, although that player's not going to revert to the bench. Tony is the player that reminded me in college more of Tyreek Hill than any other player. It's hard to be like Tyreek Hill, but Tony was close. And I think they've reached out and acquired a player to fill another position of not necessarily need, but a position of what they desire their football team to look like. The happiest man in all of football has to be Mahomes, the quarterback.
Yeah, gets another weapon for sure. The last point I want to bring up before we bring in Chris Lejawa, this is on me. We're bearing the lead here. Jamar Chase, we found out this afternoon, could be sidelined from 4 to 6 weeks. We found out tonight he's not going to be placed on injured reserve, which is good because that means that Cincinnati might believe that he could come back in maybe 2 or 3 weeks from this hip injury. Now, this was a report that we got earlier on today that the hip was sore. Now we find out that it's more than sore. This is going to put him out of commission for the next several weeks. So the question here is not, hey, do I play T. Higgins? Yes, you're playing T. Higgins in every league you can. The question here, Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
Does this guy, Farrell, for you become a must start regardless of matchup going forward, given what we've seen from him when Jamar Chase has been healthy, given what we saw from him before Jamar Chase was a Bengal, and given what we know that Chase is not going to be on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals in the near future?
Yes, sir. And given what we saw last week. Because
yes.
And I couldn't pull the trigger on him in some leagues, and oh boy, it was instant regret for not doing so. Yes, the Cincinnati Bengals moved to the entire roster to try to make up for not having Chase there. Boyd is a more than solid wide receiver who can get open. He's been in this offense. He's been seeding opportunities to equally talented but faster wide receivers. He now becomes a focal point of this offense. You can count on Hayden Hurst doing more. You can count on Mixon continuing to do a great deal of things in the passing game, just like he did this past week at Atlanta. You're going to see Samaje Perine come off the bench. What you're not going to see is, there's little depth and development at the wide receiver position. There are guys, Mike Thomas is the most interesting to me, player that played at Southern Mississippi, that I was a fan of and coming out of college, but they're almost forgettable players, and all of them are slower in their time speed than Boyd and don't have the route skills and the hand skills. The passing game is going to look different, but it is going to still be successful because you have a quarterback and you have players there to make it so.
I was bringing this question up with Adam Krautwurst, who noted KFFSC player, obviously.
And Buffalo Bills.
And here's the thing, Farrell. And I had him. He was my co-host on the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football show this week. I didn't even realize when I booked him, I was like, man, this is leading up to Bills Packers in Orchard Park on Sunday night. I got the Bills fan. I'm the Packers fan. I've been notorious on all airwaves this week. I think the Packers are going to pull off a stunning upset on Sunday night. I'm very thrilled for it. But I was talking with Krautwurst about this, and I told him one of the best fantasy feelings in the world is having guys on bye, right, in this past week in week 7, and forced to start Tyler Boyd. I don't have receivers. I got to play Boyd. Hopefully it happens. And tuning into Red Zone, 8 minutes into the Red Zone package. Hey, we got a highlight from the Cincinnati Bengals. Tyler Boyd, a 245-yard touchdown catch.
He's great. Still running.
And he's still running. And it was like my weekend was made. It was so awesome. I was
What
so
a great start.
And
Krautwurst will tell you with the loss of Chase that Cincinnati's threat to an AFC crown, which doesn't exist anyway because of the Bills, is perilous. Now you mentioned that Krautwurst was a co-host, not a guest.
No, he's a
co-host. I thought I was the only. I've got to get back to my agent because there's some things going on here that I'm just not completely comfortable with. We'll take that up after the show.
Farrell, we are going to get, don't worry, you will be co-hosting several shows with me on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Wednesday nights, only on the Better Sports Network.
You got to catch me first.
It's going to happen. I'm going to catch you. I'm going to throw the lasso. I'm going to reel you in. It's going to happen. We're going to do a Wednesday night 2-hour show. We're going to do a Friday night 1-hour show. It's going to be fun.
I'm glad you brought up Boyd, and I don't want to leave our guests waiting anymore, but I just got, out of the KFFSC, we don't have the chat. We have the slow mail, and I finally received an email from the West Coast. James Bednar is trying to effect a trade with you. He's trying to give you Boyd for Marquise Hollywood Brown. And Boyd, when he gives you Boyd, you will have a full lineup of Cincinnati wide receivers.
Right.
And you should take the deal, right, is what Bednar is saying. And I will point out that Bednar is a Marine, and you ought to listen to him. So he's telling you to take the deal. I'm coming in with it.
I didn't realize. I remember the trade offer. I didn't realize that was James Bednar sending it to me. And he sent me literally like the deal, and it said, "Can I interest you in the entire Cincinnati receiving corps? Because I already have Higgins and Chase on that team, and my receivers are really loaded." I turned him down because I feel like I'm strong enough to weather the Marquise Brown storm, the Jamar Chase storm, because I still have guys like Cortland Sutton and Christian Kirk and Devontae Adams on that team. So I think I'm good.
You don't have to legitimize it to me.
I know I don't have to, but now that you bring this up, now that I know it's James Bednar, I should have known this from the start. I may have to reevaluate because
Bednar offers you a deal. It's a pretty good deal.
It might be a pretty good deal because he's a good fantasy player, as is tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's get him in here.
The most patient man in the high stakes fantasy football hour business. He started playing fantasy football just in 2018. Okay. And he tried it out. He was asked, "Hey, you got to try this out. You got to try this out." Nah, I'm not interested. Yeah. Finally decided to play in 2018. And now he says he can't get enough of it. In fact, in 2012, you go all the way back to 2012, he won a national championship, a grand prize that paid him over $50,000. He only had 3 teams as far as a skin in the game back then. Now he is an exclusively high stakes player. He has set his sights on a $500,000 grand prize in the Football Guys Players Championship. Remember, heading into this week, out of almost 15,000 teams, he is in 8th place overall. Please welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Lejawa. Chris, welcome into the show, man. Thank you so much.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you on. So now take me through the timeline here. You're exclusively a high stakes player now. 2018 is when you started, but you won the 50 grand back in 2012. Do I have my facts right here?
Yeah, I actually, when I sent you the email, so 2018, it wasn't accurate. 2005 is when I started playing fantasy. So I was
okay, all right, I got you. So Chris, take me through this, because anytime you win a national contest, 4 figures, 5 figures, 6, well, especially 5 and 6 figures, that's awesome. 2012, take me back through that, what it was like winning that 50 grand.
Oh, it was just, it was incredible. I actually won by 0.3. So it was a nail biter of all nail biters. And I'll tell you the last game, I had all my players go, and I kept swapping out my defense back and forth, and I played the wrong defense. It cost me 13 points. And the guy that was chasing me, the only one guy could have caught me. He had Marshawn Lynch going on Monday night. And all he needed was 3.5 points from Marshawn Lynch. And obviously back then, Marshawn Lynch was beast mode. So
right.
I was kicking myself. I was very angry. I said, 16 points, I thought I had a legit shot with that because they were playing the 49ers. But 3 points, I was like, there's no way. And the Niners came out, stuffed them on every play, and they just started blowing them out on the game, and they sat Lynch to basically the second half because the game was a blowout. And I was in shock.
I watched a post game interview with Marshawn Lynch involved here recently, and Marshawn's still going. It was fantastic with a variety of profanities that you don't ordinarily hear. But be that as it may, congratulations.
Yeah, fantastic. So this was Monday night when Lynch did this, right? Or didn't?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what did you do that Monday night to celebrate when you knew you won the 50K?
Well, I was actually upset because I didn't think I was going to win it.
Right.
So I left that night. My parents owned a bar, or it might have been a Sunday night game. I can't remember. It was either Sunday night or Monday night. It was the last game of the year, so I think maybe it was Sunday night. But anyways, my parents owned a bar for 30 years, so I had to get out of the house. I went there just to, have a few cocktails to, drink my sorrows down, because I just thought I blew this by playing the wrong defense. And sure enough, it came in.
And so, Chris, when did you find out that night about Lynch's shortcomings in that game?
Oh, I was watching the game. I just couldn't believe what I was watching, that he couldn't even get past the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, I actually have a chance here. And he had he had one catch and 10 yards rushing. So, I mean, he was right. One more catch and I would have lost.
Just like the Patriots. You were just like the Patriots.
So it was just amazing. But hey, win by 50, win by 0.3. It's a win, right?
It's a win. A win is a win is a win. So awesome. Congratulations on that 5-figure grand prize. I know you're chasing a 6-figure grand prize this year. When you're not doing that, Chris, can you tell us what you're doing for a living down in Illinois? I'm in Wisconsin, so I say down in Illinois because it is south of me. So what are you doing in Illinois now to pass the time when you're not crushing all these fantasy leagues?
I'm an electrician, so I'm an electrician for the biggest airline in the world. And
okay.
So I'm currently there at work right now on a break.
Really? I didn't realize that. Oh, good for you. Thank you for joining us then.
Yeah, I'm actually out in an hour, but my partner's cool. He's like, no, man, you got to go take care of this. He's like, you're a celebrity now, so. And
Tell us what city your celebrity is brewing from. Where in Illinois?
Where am I at?
Yes.
Just outside of Chicago.
Oh, sweet home Chicago. Very, very
sweet home Chicago.
Yeah, you got to love it. I'm going to have to ask you some Chicago questions, but I want to start, this past year in the third round in the FFPC, you drafted Nick Chubb in the third round, were immediately detained for thievery. You really stuck it to him right there. Then later on, and this was a strategy I did with Ezekiel and Tony Pollard. Later on, you picked up Kareem Hunt. What were you thinking? This is yet, I suppose, based on Hunt's productivity this year, you're hoping that the trade deadline smiles very well on you, and it could. I was hoping that both players, in Pollard and Ezekiel's case, would play. Balky asked me this: why do you keep drafting Pollard? Do you think he's going to replace Ezekiel? No, but Pollard so far this year, 450 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I bring all that together to put it in your lap, because what I did was I looked at it and I said that could be a Chubb and Hunt thing. Are you glad you did it? What do you think is going to happen with it, and how are you utilizing it going forward?
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. Well, my logic behind it was that the way I drafted it is normally I wait for QBs and tight ends. So I wait unless it just falls on me, or I go a different strategy. Certain players will fall to me. I'll jump on them and then kind of change it up, because I kind of go every draft. I kind of see what's fallen to me, and then I kind of work from there. But the logic behind that was with taking the QB and a tight end early like that. I knew I had a lot of sleeper receivers. I just knew I could pick up a lot of receivers that I really liked that I can get later in the rounds. And I wanted to solidify one backfield. When I had Chubb, I said, well, let me get Hunt. I know I have one running back for the entire year. I mean, unless barring,
good point,
terrible injuries for both of them. But, and then obviously Hunt's a flex play most of the time. This year's a little off right now. I think it's because of that trade deadline. I think they're holding him out, see what they're going to get so he doesn't get injured. If something falls through, I think he's going to be back on the field playing a little more. If not, he could be the number one somewhere else. So it kind of works out. It could be the perfect storm. And then, now I had one backfield. Now I got two stud starters along with my number one QB, number one tight end, phenomenal receivers. I mean, this, the way I built this team was, I look at a receiver strong, even though, running backs you can always pick up and receivers, but that was my logic behind it.
Open. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it always, absolutely. I want to talk, and Farrell and I touched on this, Chris, at the top of the show with the Jamar Chase injury, but you took Tyler Boyd in the 10th round. Now, is he a must start for you until Chase gets back, given how talented that Cincinnati offense is?
Oh, 100%. You have Boyd, you play him. Absolutely. It might have been different if we just started the year and the way Burrow came out, but the way Burrow again. He's back to being elite again. He's not seeing ghosts, and he's throwing that rock around. So absolutely, if you have Boyd, you play him.
They are getting it together in Cincinnati. They are trying to get it together in our nation's capital. I see in the 13th round you did something that I did a couple times, and I'm always trying to tell myself, don't draft last year's team, draft this year's team. And I'm looking there, and J.D. McKissick's on the board, and I love this player. I always have. I think his contribution is great. I try to come up with scenarios of why I would draft him, and I did a couple times. But for the most part, I skipped over his name. In a previous show, we fantasized about the idea that he had accepted his Buffalo free agency deal and how wonderful that would have been. Do you ever see, I know you can't cut him, but do you ever see a chance to start McKissick? What's it going to take? Is it an injury situation?
That's funny you said that. I'm done with McKissick. I just dropped him.
Well, and that's the thing. I would think about dropping him. As soon as you drop him, they lose not one, but maybe two running backs. As soon as you drop him, I might drop him once the rosters become frozen, because if someone else grabbed him and then started scoring points, it would drive me nuts. But, I think the likelihood of that is limited. Who did you replace him with?
I think I got Zamir White out for him.
Well, that's just
okay.
Except when you're going for 2 points. That's
exactly. Well, my logic behind that is right now McKissick's not going to see my lineup the way everything shapes up with the bye weeks and everything. So he's not a guy, regardless with an injury, that's going to take over the backfield.
No.
He's going to get you your PPR here and there, and he's going to have his crap games. And the position I'm in right now, I don't even want to see him in my lineup to get me 3 points, like it's happened to me a few times.
He is the equivalent. He's equivalent with Matt Breida and perhaps I can't think of it. Maybe Sony Michel as far as fantasy point production.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you make a good point. All right, so Chris, we have high stakes players on here every week. I always like to look over not only how they drafted, but what they're doing on their roster throughout the season as far as transactions and everything. And I got to admit, you have been one of the most active players as far as having a team in the top 5, top 10 of any national tournament. You are averaging in your 8th place team right now about just over 3 transactions every week, which I think is pretty high for a team that's up that high in the standings. Because you think like, oh, my team is awesome. I don't need to make a whole lot of additions or subtractions to it. You are maybe expertly, some would say, micromanaging this team because you're keeping it up there. Mm-hmm. How much time are you spending every week, not only with this team, but your other FFPC teams and your other high stakes teams as well, trying to make sure that you are outworking everybody else on the waiver wire?
Oh, I think it's very important. I do a lot of it. I try to get all of it done, Monday, Tuesday, all the way into Wednesday. So I'll go back and forth. But I'm trying to, some of those moves, the reason why I make a lot of moves is I'll take a flyer on people. Mm-hmm. And if I'm hearing something or I'm seeing something, they pass the eye test for me, I'll take a flyer on them and see how they react. And I'll give them a week or two. And if it's not panning out, I'll drop them, try find somebody else to do the same thing with. And I just hold it from there. Like I think a perfect example is I picked up Tyquan Thornton from New England. Got him for $1. I was big. I know you guys were talking big on Isaiah Likely earlier when I was listening in. He was one of my sleepers. And he just didn't pan out. I really like him. But you can see that it just, I think Farrell touched on it, that with Andrews healthy, he's not going to get it. It's not there. It's not going to be a Gronk and Hernandez. It's just not going to happen. And, that's, so I kind of went big on him in free agency. I still have him on some teams, dropped them, picked them back up. He's one of those guys, but it's hard to, I would have played him this week. Like, he was my sleeper this week. I just knew he'd come out and play a good game. And that was with Andrews playing. That was my logic behind it, but he got hurt, so I couldn't tell you if that would have happened with Andrews in there.
Now here's the thing, Chris, in regards to Likely. Let's say Andrews plays this following week, right? Obviously in week 9, and Likely has his typical, 12 snaps, 15 snaps, 1 target, no catches, whatever. Now, at that point, is that the time that you spend little to no money on Likely, get him on your roster just in case something happens? Because if Andrews were to go out, if he were to get hurt, again, you're not paying a whole lot. And if he gets hurt this following week, or he's not getting the targets and the snaps, all of a sudden you have Likely for very cheap, and then you can deploy it. Is that the strategy that you'll be doing in the leagues that Likely still remains a free agent after next week?
A lot of it all depends on how my roster is constructed. If I have plenty of tight ends, or I have elite tight ends with a good backup, I'm probably not reaching FFPC with 1.5. I mean, that's a big bonus there. But it's if I can get him on a cheap and I got room for him, absolutely, I would have him on my roster. If I don't have room for him, you just can't hold on to somebody if just because. I mean, not in these stakes. I mean, you can't give up a week or 2 or 3 weeks holding a player when you could be using another player. Mm-hmm. That'll cost you. You lose 2 weeks because you're holding a player when you could have picked up a Marquise Goodwin, or you could have picked up somebody that's going to help you immediately. That's a different story. So it's all on where you're standing.
Well, I tell everyone that is playing fantasy football in the FFPC where I play, or in the KFFSC where I manage, and which we refer to as the most southern part of Chicago. That's how we refer to Louisville down here. So you might as
absolutely
come on and play. Just come a little further south. Okay, you mentioned Goodwin. Let's turn to him a little bit. I imagine in the FFPC Dynasty Leagues, when I picked up Goodwin this week to supplement my DK Metcalf play, that lots of guys chuckled about me adding a 31-year-old player. But I'll tell you what, I encourage guys all the time, when they hear a coach say, well, this is going to be our go-to guy, or when you see a guy getting some play on Sunday, I go ahead and put him in the queue where I don't forget about it. Because if a player is going to get a chance, let me get him on my roster and pay a couple bucks and see what he does. Don't let him blow up and then go start chasing him with everybody else with big 3-figure payments. So I love what you did. And, Goodwin, I'd like to hear what role he's going to play in your lineup as you go forward. He's going to start for me this weekend. The guy's 5'9". I've always thought he's a better player than what he's had opportunities to play. The 1 year that he got to start it every game for the 49ers, he caught near 60 passes, didn't find the end zone much because they basically brought him off the field and put a bigger receiver on. but I think that he has never lost a step. This is one of the fastest players in the league, and even if he does lose a step, he's going to be faster than anybody else. He paid his he paid his dues playing for the Bears when they couldn't get the ball to him, and I think of him now. I think with this quarterback, this coach, this situation, finally at 31 years old, this guy's getting an opportunity to do something.
I actually agree 100%. I picked him up on a bunch of teams. I was surprised. A lot of guys, I don't expect to get some of these guys, and I end up getting him on a lot more teams than I thought I would have.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's a definitely plug and play right now, especially if Metcalf's out. But Seattle, I mean, biggest surprise to me. They're just playing lights out. They're putting up points. It's easy to throw on a Giants right now, so I see Goodwin having a good game. If you got room for him, I actually don't have. I don't have room on my team this week to play him on this eighth place team. I mean, I don't have room, so he's going to be sitting on my bench. But that's just because of the way my lineup's constructed.
You'll keep someone else from using him.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And I think, one of the things that we need to understand as high stakes owners, and Chris, you already know this, Farrell, obviously you know this as well. You can never have too much depth. And the more depth you can add throughout the season, the better off you're going to be. When we got 6 teams on bye next week, people, 6 teams. I mean, you're going to have to figure stuff out. It's going to be, it's the bye again coming up. And to have a guy like Marquise Goodwin to have that depth maybe doesn't help you this week, but players like that will help you going forward, at least while the bye weeks and the injuries are going on for sure. You touched on this earlier, Chris, another wide receiver, young wide receiver, Tyquan Thornton. He's healthy. He's had one really good game for New England and one, let's just say, not so good game for the Patriots. What type of game, Chris, do you think he has this this Sunday against the New York Jets?
Right now, he's a tough one to gauge because he's been playing with both quarterbacks. So more with Zappy, but with Matt coming in, I think he's going to score. I mean, I'm looking at 7 to 10 points for him. I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, maybe he'll throw out a touchdown, maybe, but I want to see him play with Mac for a week or two. See the chemistry there. I know they're going to be feeding him. They're going to be doing the gadget plays with him. They're going to jet sweep him. He's going to be doing a lot of that. I think they're going to implement him into that offense, make it more explosive. So I see him. He's that's a stash for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I see him panning out in a couple weeks.
Yeah. You sure don't want to play him this week. You sure don't.
Again, I don't have room for him. If I have to play him, I got no problem playing him. Put it that way. It's another example like Tyler Boyd, like you mentioned. Well, bye weeks, gotcha. I got this guy. I got to plug him this week. Well, you hope for the best, right? Maybe he'll get that 20 points like he did the first week he played.
That Jets defense is coming at us like a bullet. Down in Carolina, it's you can't. What the old saying, you can't tell the players without a scorecard. It's for people like us that go deep into depth charts. There's still some surprises when you start reading it. And now, Chuba Hubbard is unavailable, and I'm wondering because when I had to make this decision in free agency, which one, Foreman, Hubbard. When I had to make the few times I made the decision in actually drafting one of the players, I was about 50-50. I like Foreman better, but we talked earlier in the show about it. He's had terrible luck, and Hubbard seems to be a player that everyone is very, very positive about. So where did you lie on it earlier, and which one? Naturally, for this weekend, it's all Foreman, but where did you fall in evaluating those two players side by side, and were you happy with the result now that Foreman is going to get to play this weekend?
Well, let's put it. I've had Foreman ahead. I still have Foreman ahead, but where I have Chubbard because I couldn't get Foreman, I'll root for Chubbard on those.
You're
teams,
happy about that too, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but if I have to pick one, it's definitely, in my opinion, it's Foreman. I think he's going to pick a lot of teams up right now. I think he's going to help them out. A lot of people are scared there, but he's good. He's going to catch some balls. He's going to run for a lot of yards. I think people were overlooking him. Like you could have picked up. I picked up Chubbard or Dante Foreman in a bunch of leagues and for nothing.
Yeah.
And I did that when I started sniffing around that McCaffrey trade. And then guys are going out bidding $300-$400 on him after it happened. So,
Yep.
I mean, you got to be ahead of the game on some of this stuff.
Got to anticipate. Have good fantasy football instincts. That's what's happening up there in Chicago.
Yeah, you got to look ahead.
You do have to look ahead. And Chris, I want to we got a couple of emails here for you and one question from the chat room that I'm going to get to right away. It's from Hudson Kern-Reeve, our resident Ivy League professor at Cornell University. He wants to know, is James Robinson startable this week? James Robinson, who went from Jacksonville to the New York Jets, facing the New England Patriots. I don't know what your James Robinson shares are like, but what are your thoughts on starting Robinson right away this week?
If you have other running backs, I would go with your other running backs.
So you don't like him. You do not like him as a start this week.
I do not like him as a start this week.
Okay.
I mean, I think he gets you some points. I think he'll get his playing time. I think it could be something like a McCaffrey without the touchdown. Where he's going to get his maybe 10 touches, but I just don't see him having a monster game or anything like that. Not this week, but I do like him going there. I think he's a play going forward. This week, I would have a hard time trusting him, but moving on, I would definitely play him.
Yeah, I think moving on is where you definitely look at him. You got to look elsewhere in week 8. I think I'm with you. Hudson Kern-Reeve is with you as well. Drew in Scranton, PA. I'm not sure if he used to work at Dunder Mifflin. This is something I'll have to email him back on, but he wants to know, hey, Chris, I have no Edwards-Helaire or Eckler this week. How do you feel about Khalil Herbert as a flex in Dallas? Congrats on the success so far. That is Drew in Scranton, PA. Drew, thank you so much for the email and for listening or for watching. Khalil Herbert, this Bears rushing attack, Chris, it looks awesome. What about Khalil Herbert as a flex against the Cowboys?
Play him. I would play him. I actually like Herbert this week more than Montgomery.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah.
Tell us why.
Right now, I'm just looking at it, and I'm just the eye test. I mean, obviously, I'm in Chicago, so I'm watching all the Bears games, and I'm just watching this. And Herbert's hitting the holes. He's just hitting them quick, and he's going downhill. I don't know. Montgomery's a little dancing around a little bit. He's just not. He's got to find his mojo again. I don't know if something bothers him. I mean, he's getting a ton of touches, but I think that it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split this week. So in my opinion, right now I like Herbert better. Long run, I would move back to Montgomery with a little easier matchups. This is a tough matchup, so I would go there. This is a tough game. With the running game, I mean, I think you could trust all of them, to be honest, just because when you got a running quarterback like Fields, it opens up more holes for your RBs. They do the run pass option, sorry, the RPOs, and it opens up holes. I just think this is a tough matchup, but Herbert, I think he can get you. I think he can get you in the goal, get you a touchdown this week.
Herbert can quickly get to the second level. He's the same reason you like Foreman. I like that. And if Ditka was still coaching this team, the line would block the right gaps for both these backs. That's all I can say.
That's true. That is absolutely true. No question. One other email here for you, Chris, before Farrell has his final question. This comes from George in Bedminster, New Jersey. What's up, Chris? Is there a good backup running back to have on my roster in Seattle behind Kenneth Walker? Thank you for the email, George, New Jersey. Farrell, I'm going to bring this up right now. I have a local fantasy football show I host in Northeast Wisconsin, and we get texts, we get tweets, we get Facebook messages, we get emails, and my co-host he doesn't have the fastball he used to. He's getting up there in years, and he said, here you go, Bulky. Do you like KY3 this week? And I said, who the hell is KY3? And he's like, I don't know. This is what the guy emailed in. It said KW3, which was Kenneth Walker the third, not KY3. So we have a situation where either the alphabet changed or my co-host eyes are not what they once were.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us. It happens to the best of us, right?
It can happen.
Yes, it can. But Chris, for you, Kenneth Walker is now the man in Seattle. Are you rostering any of the guys behind him as a potential one injury away guy?
Yeah, I have DJ Moore or DJ Dallas. Sorry. Yeah, DJ Dallas. I like him. I think, one injury away, I believe that he's going to put up the same numbers as Kenneth Walker. A lot of people don't see that, but DJ Dallas is a stud running back. If he's healthy, I see him making some noise. He could be a league winner, in my opinion, if something happens to Walker. So I would jump on him. 100%.
You're going to love playing down here in Kentucky because I can tell one thing. You've never met a running back you didn't like. And that's a good thing in fantasy football. But, yeah, Dallas is, Balky knows how much I love Walker.
Yeah.
I think Walker has done things in the last 3 games similar to Jacobs that no running back has done all year long and in a lot of years. Balky, we've exhausted a lot of players, and Chris has been forthcoming with a lot of guys. Can I ask my question?
Fire away. Absolutely.
Well, okay, Chris. My question is this. There are some previously top performers in fantasy football, and you impress me as a guy that knows when to play them and knows when to bench them. Is there a top draft pick or a consistent performer that you've had through the season that has a matchup this week that gives you pause that you will leave on the bench? And then is there a sleeper? We've already spent a few. Goodwin would be an excellent one. You've already shown this, but is there a sleeper that you can turn to as well? These are the 2 questions that I'm going to write down these answers because, unlike you, I don't have a team at the top of these leaderboards.
Yeah, actually, Montgomery. I'm benching him this week. I just don't like him. So I think he's the bust of the week for me.
I see. Okay.
I can see that.
Yeah, and it's nothing wrong with him. It's that Dallas defense that you don't want him to play against. I understand.
Yeah, he's just not putting up the yards. He's not hitting that hole like I like to see him do. He's getting the volume, but I think this week, like I said, I think it's going to be a little closer to Herbert getting a little bit more playing time. So you take in both those accounts, if I'm correct, it's going to drop him down.
And what about a sleeper, buddy?
I love Ellinger. I grab them everywhere.
Wow, I like it too. Okay, cool.
So I think you grab him. I think he's gonna do some special things. I think he's got a lot of receivers. He got the phenomenal running back, and he likes to run. So you're gonna get some rushing yards from him, and you're gonna get. He's gonna be somebody you want to have on your team if you need a quarterback.
He's a 20-point guy when the 2 quarterbacks on bye this week, as now you think about it, Mahomes either the 1 or 2 off the board, and Herbert either the 3 or 4 off the board. with those guys being on bye, you might be pushed to have a 20-point quarterback. And I've made some mistakes with we had bye week fill-ins this year, Wentz and Matt Ryan, and I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, with Ellinger, yeah. I would play him over Dalton. I know a lot of people are throwing Dalton in their lineup, and I would 100% play Ellinger over Dalton this week.
I would as well. For sure. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, I was just he's my sleeper pick, so we'll see where he lands on the scoreboard. But
I think one of the things that's important to remember, as Chris is pointing out here in his Ellinger analysis, if you have a quarterback that has legs, that can use those legs proficiently and get yardage in fantasy football, it's why we're still talking about Justin Fields here in Week 8, because he is able to rush the football. Like, if he was not rushing the ball, he'd be an afterthought. And Fields is now not only a guy we're talking about starting in Superflex, but a guy that could be a starter in certain leagues. Obviously, with no Justin Herbert, no Patrick Mahomes this week, he could be a starter for you this week. So I like that aspect as well. But Ellinger, for sure, in Superflex, you should be considering him. And maybe just a sleeper in your Football Guys Players Championship, your main event. Obviously, the FPC is what Chris Lejawa is after as he chases a $500,000 grand prize. We certainly appreciate not only putting up with me blabbering so you come on late, but with me blabbering even more and you stay on late, which we certainly appreciate, Chris. We'll let you get back to work. Listen, good luck in all your leagues, not just the one that you're in 8th place overall in the Football Guys Players Championship, but all your leagues going forward. We certainly appreciate you coming on short notice, which I also appreciate tonight. We learned a lot tonight. We had some fun. I hope you did too. Be good, and we'll talk with you again soon, Chris.
Hey, I just want to do a quick shout out to my kids. I know they're watching right now. So Caleb, Gianna, Christopher, I'll see you at home shortly. I'm leaving work, so I'm out of here. Hi to my wife, Michelle. Thankful to her that she lets me play.
Yes.
Who's the kid's favorite team?
Is it the Bears?
No, Chiefs fan.
Oh, we shouldn't have said that. No, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Waiting for the Bears. Goodness gracious.
My homie. So I just started playing with the boys this year. So, last year. Sorry. So I'm trying to get my boys into it.
All right. Well, to Caleb and Christopher and what is Gianna, right?
Gianna,
and then your wife, your lovely wife, your understanding
Michelle.
wife, Michelle. Obviously, and we shout out to them as well. Chris, thank you so much, man. This was fun. It was an absolute pleasure. You be good, man.
All right. Hope to see you guys at the end of the year.
You got it. We'll plan on it. Thank you so much, Chris Lejawa, a former national tournament winner. $50,000. He's chasing $500,000 out of 15,000 teams. He's only got 7 teams ahead of him heading into Week 8. All right. Now we have to go rapid fire on this last portion here, Farrell. We'll do our best. Now, I want to kick things off, and this is going to be a bit of a curveball. We're looking for sleeper running backs, receivers, and tight ends. This is from Hudson Curve Reed. He wants to know, after we get done with Chris, which we're now done with Chris, do we have any sleeper running backs? Do we have any sleeper receivers? Do we have any sleeper tight ends this week? I will kick things off. I'll look at the tight end position as far as sleepers go. Kind of like Dawson Knox, which you say, oh, bulky, is that a sleeper? Yeah, but he hasn't. It's not like he's been crushing it all. He was drafted as a starter. Now I think he's become a sleeper. I think Greg Dulcich, you obviously have to look at.
He's not a sleeper.
I like. Gesicki, wait, hold on. Dulcich is not a sleeper anymore?
We've been talking about Dulcich since March. We told people to draft him in front of Albert O. No one listened to us.
All right.
Well, we've been to,
All right. I get it. You're right. What about Harrison Bryant? Does he qualify?
There's a sleeper.
Halloween night. Black and orange versus black and orange. The battle for Ohio on Halloween night.
Did Njoku get hit by a truck or something? What happened with
high ankle sprain? But allegedly he is still trying to play Monday night.
That's what I see. He's still, a lot of discord going around. I saw a lot of money on Bryant for might not play on Njoku.
Yeah.
The position's good because Njoku is a supreme athlete.
Right.
Bryant, yeah. Okay.
Hear me out on this. Wide receiver sleeper, Romeo Doubs. And you say, Bulky, the Packers offense sucks. And I say, yes, I agree. The Packers offense does suck. But if the Bills somehow get out to a 17-0, a 20-0, a 21-0, a 24-0 lead, Aaron Rodgers will be forced to throw the ball. We know that Christian Watson is probably going to play. We know that Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard will for sure not play in this game. Romeo Doubs could be a sleeper this week because of necessity, Farrell.
Yes, I agree.
So you like Doubs?
I love it. I think
Okay.
that is one of the best sleeper picks I've seen in a long, long time. You know, it's a shame that we didn't do the show Wednesday night. You could have given one. You could have given everyone Demarcus Robinson, who didn't make the Raiders this year and got waived.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Now, here's a popular one. Donovan Peoples-Jones on Monday night against the Bengals. Because he's more of a polarizing guy because everybody's like, oh, Amari Cooper and Harrison Bryant's going to get the underneath stuff and Kareem Hunt and everything. But DPJ, you look at this guy, what he's done this year. He's had some under the radar sneaky plays. And I think if you're looking for a sleeper as a flex, you could do worse than DPJ.
He should be on your roster because he won't be a sleeper much longer, especially when they have they have a very good quarterback now, and they have a superior quarterback coming back to the team. And if you've held on to him this long, that this is your chance to play him. I'm playing him, and Trevor Holt and I are playing him in a FFPC team that we are doing well in the league. So yes, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and that would be considered a sleeper. But as we talk about targets on the show, you know, I don't love the concept of targets. But in the case of this player, the targets and the catches are damn near even. And that's what you want in a player.
Let me throw this because running back sleepers are always difficult, right? Especially in the high stakes space. What about Sunday morning, 9:30 Eastern time in London, taking on the Jaguars? What about Melvin Gordon? Because Latavius Murray has been getting a lot of touches there. But what about Melvin Gordon as a potential sleeper this week since Nathaniel Hackett, as he is coaching for his job, has already said Melvin Gordon is the starting running back there?
Yeah, why not? If you drafted Melvin Gordon, you got him in the 9th and 10th round. He's probably your RB3 or 4. If you've got waiver wire issues, you're going to need to play him. If you like to play 3 running backs, probably one of them should be Melvin Gordon.
Last sleeper I'm going to throw at you. He's in Indianapolis this week. The Commanders came off a pretty significant win over the Green Bay Packers last week, and they utilized not only Brian Robinson, but Antonio Gibson, who caught several passes, also caught a touchdown. And I had conversations with high-stakes players this week saying that, hey, Brian Robinson maybe doesn't have the stranglehold on this job that a lot of people thought he did. And Antonio Gibson is showing that, hey, I'm still viable in this backfield. Antonio Gibson this week at Indianapolis as a sleeper.
Sure, I don't think that's much of a sleeper, but why wouldn't you start him? He's and I think the running back position is actually 2 positions. Is what they're with the Commanders team. They're looking for answers, and they're trying to give their young quarterback help. And this is the kind of and he is supplanted in that role who we talked about earlier. And perhaps I didn't answer or ask that question as well as I should have, but he's supplanted McKissick in this offense with that type of role. And he has more upside and more explosion than McKissick. Probably not the same kind of hands, but nevertheless, yeah, good play.
Hey, the rest of them covers up for the hands, man. That happens. You know, it just you spray a little of the non-stick stuff on the hands to try to get the frying pan hands. You spray the non-stick stuff on. Stuff happens, right? But it's still worth it because it's a better quality performance, right?
When we were at Planet Hollywood, did Gibson at times drop all the way into double digits?
Absolutely, he did.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now there's a steal.
That is a steal for sure. All right, so we're gonna fly through these emails here, Farrell. I'm gonna be honest with you; they're mostly about the Giants and Seattle game. This week.
Why not?
Yeah, so we'll concentrate on that. Cal in Apopka, Florida. Are you trusting Wan'Dale Robinson in Seattle? My other option is Robert Woods in Houston. I can't figure out which is the better matchup. Thanks, guys. Cal in Apopka, Florida. Yeah, I like both these matchups. Wan'Dale Robinson against a not so good Seattle defense. Robert Woods against a not so good Texans defense. I'm going to bet football. I've always said it's a young man's game. I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson over Robert Woods here.
Wonderful Wan'Dale with the exit of Tony is Look, the Giants is it 6-1, Balky? But they're 6-1, and they befuddle even their entire organization that's looking around going, how are we 6-1? If we're going to stay here, we're going to have to use guys that are getting healthy like Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson is a threat all over the field, playing for a team that needs guys to step up. Robert Woods is a player that the offense is comfortable targeting. There we are again, 6 times a game. He'll catch 4 or 5 of them. He might even do something around the end zone, but this is a run-first team, and I believe Tannehill's health is somewhat in question this week. Is it?
It is. He's questionable.
There's no way that you put Woods over Burks. Woods over Wan'Dale. I wrote down Burks because I wanted to report that our bet with Dave Turp is but we've got to be fair about that, Balky, because Burks is injured and Woods is up, but we're going to win that bet. So how do we make it fair? I've been thinking of ways to do it, but what we're going to do then is we're going to let Dave Turp buy me dinner, and I'm going to buy you dinner. It's going to be a three-headed monster at dinner. But I did call the restaurant that I've chosen, and they got a bottle of Pappy there, and I asked them to tape the name Turp to it. And the guy asked me how to spell Turp, and I told him. And so he sent me a picture, and I'll send it to you. He sent me a picture of the bottle of the Pappy Van Winkle with the name Turp. It says September 2023, and it's taped to the bottle. So I'll share that.
That's fantastic. With as much money as Turp is winning in the FFPC Weekly Challenge and the FFPC this year, he can absolutely afford. Is this the original? Is this the original recipe, Pappy Van Winkle, or is this the new Pappy Van Winkle? Do we know?
It's all the same recipe. It's all the same as they call it in their business, juice. But it is one of the later vintages. But it is all special.
Perfect. I'm in. Sign me up. All right. Blake in Fort Worth wants us to sign him up for what tight end he's playing this week. He wants to know who do I flex in football guys this weekend? Noah Fant at home against the Giants or Mike Gesicki in Detroit. Farrell, the Detroit Lions cannot stop anybody. I am playing Mike Gesicki over Noah Fant against a surprisingly stout Giants defense.
That's an easy one because Gesicki can take you to the roof. Noah Fant is in the twilight zone of tight ends. There's multiple tight ends out there in Seattle, and yeah, it's highly questionable what kind of career Fant is going to have as a Seahawk.
Mike, Middlebury, Connecticut, dear Balky and Farrell. Geno Smith has been carrying my team the last few weeks, but I sit him in favor of Daniel Jones. I appreciate it. Mike in Middlebury, Connecticut, we appreciate you. I love Daniel Jones, Farrell. If you look at my Kentucky lineups, I have Daniel Jones probably going in 3 or 4 of them this week. I like him, and I definitely like him over Geno Smith. I'm a big fan of Daniel Jones in Week 8.
Well, you, Balky, guys from Connecticut, the rest of the 49 states were going to play Geno Smith. You're not going to shoot the horse that's winning the race. And Geno, this is all coming from the fact that DK Metcalf is unavailable to Geno. Geno is an equal opportunity quarterback. He's going to make Metcalf out of whoever he can see on the field. He's having the most marvelous year. Daniel Jones is a fine player, but we have a running back in the backfield at Seattle that is similar in production now to the running back with the Giants. So you've got a situation now that evens the playing field. I'm going to go with Geno. The game is in Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it gets a little loud out there. I'm a Geno guy.
Okay. You say Geno, I say Daniel Jones. But by the way, I like both of them this week. So you can't go wrong for sure. Final email, Tom in Hominy, Oklahoma. Hey, guys, it's come to this. Is Raheem Mostert at home against the Lions the correct play over Najee Harris in Philly? Thank you, Tom in Hominy, Oklahoma. Najee Harris, Farrell, it's really difficult to make an argument against him being the first-round bust this year for anybody who took him in the first round. I waited till the second round and took him in several leagues. Kind of regretting that. He's the bulky second-round bust. Hasn't been good. I know you're a big Mostert fan. And I am on board. I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm always like a ride or die based on draft capital. Cannot do it anymore. Play Raheem Mostert over Najee Harris this week.
Yes. Now, you can make an argument for Harris based on the fact that Pittsburgh's moving up the road to play the New York Jets. Is that correct?
I thought they were against the Eagles this week. Is it the Jets?
Oh, no, it is the Eagles. What's wrong with me?
Okay, all right.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Oh,
okay. The Eagles have the secondary, the two corners that are just shutting everyone down. A big part of why they're 6-0. A stat was the other day that when quarterbacks target receivers playing against the Eagles corners, that they would have the same quarterback rating as if they just threw the ball into the ground, which I found that to be. So you have to assume that the middle of the field and underneath could mean something. So Najee Harris, I don't want people to listen to this and say, oh, they said Harris is not going to have a good game. I think Harris could have the opportunity to catch balls like he did somewhat last year. Not ridiculous numbers, but that's where he's going to get his fantasy play against the Eagles. And if they are able to move the ball in the middle of the field to get some goal line play, he could win there. But yes, Mostert in this situation is one of the better starts, probably one of the top 5 starts of running backs in the league. And the 2 of those 5 we just talked about is Seattle and for the New York Giants.
I totally understand it. I think this is a difficult thing. For a lot of people, they're like, I cannot do it. I cannot sit Harris over Raheem Mostert, a guy I maybe got in a double-digit round of the KFFSC or of the Football Guys Players Championship or the FFPC main event. I get it. But
we'll look at, then go to your flex receiver and see if it's a guy like Robert Woods and say, Harris, middle of the field, corners challenge. Maybe Harris gets 6-8 targets, and that makes him a better play than my flex receiver.
Hudson Kern Reeve, by the way, in the chat room right now, agreeing with us. Mostert is the pick between him and Harris. This is the world we live in, people. It's the world.
I never had a professor agree with me the entire time I was in my 8 years of college. I never had a professor agree with me.
Was this Western Kentucky? Is that where you were at?
Oh, Balky, cut out your tongue.
Was it Murray
State? And when we were in school, that was a real rivalry. I mean, some of those basketball, and to a lesser degree, the football games were some real great rivalries. And that was my undergrad school, was Murray State, and I enjoyed every minute of it and relive it often with people that were there enjoying it with me, as well as in my own mind.
Well, anybody who is living this moment with me and Farrell, we are all trying to race towards a grand prize.
Hey, Balky, since we're over time anyway, can I keep talking?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead. That I'm enjoying, and one of my favorite teams that entered into the top 10 in the KFFSC this week is Team Wankcoin, one of the greatest names, Wankcoin. Wankcoin was drafted by our beloved Leroy Corson and sits, I think, at 6, 7, 8 place, something like that.
Yep.
Congratulations to Leroy bringing Team Appleton, returning them to the glory that they have experienced in previous years.
Listen, we had Kurt win it all a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had Dave on the cusp of it a couple of years before that. I ended up taking down the Run to Daylight Championship a couple of years ago.
Mighty fine trophy. Is it back there anywhere?
It's back. It's here. Hold on. You're gonna have to stand for a minute. I'm gonna bring the trophy up.
Yeah, people need to see that trophy because you had to beat a lot of fine players to do that. And perhaps this year in that type of tournament, you'll return to our Super Bowl party and draft, Super Bowl weekend, 11th and 12th. The Dizzle is rumored to be there in attendance, and there you are, baby.
I take it back. It was the checkered flag.
Yeah,
checkered flag, not the Run to Daylight.
Jimmy Johnson run the day.
Jimmy Johnson
run the daylight down. Very good, very good. That's a beautiful trophy.
Still great. Still love it. I cherish it, and I hope to win another one soon. And maybe Leroy takes down Kentucky this year, which would be great.
Wouldn't
and
it be
maybe
sweet?
Farrell, you take down the Football Guys Players Championship or the main event.
Well, let's don't go crazy now. Let's do. I have a team that's worked its way up to 300th place, and I'm feeling really good about that.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate all people that say like, oh, this is why you should not be doxing yourself on where you're at in the main event in the Football Guys Players Championship, because you are a super talented high stakes player. And the advice that you give out on this show, I follow, a lot of smart people follow as well. And we hope to continue that each and every week. We will do this again next Friday, where you will dispense some expert advice. We'll bring on another guest, which will be great. Farrell, you be good. Happy Halloween, my friend. And we'll do this again in November.
You got it. See you then, brother.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, and the guy who gave me this trophy for winning the 2020 Checkered Flag Championship, the Sweet 16. Very thankful for it, and can't wait to win another one when that opportunity presents itself. Hey, listen, we have gone way over time. I certainly appreciate you hanging out with us as far as you have tonight. I want to thank Chris Lejawa. I want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for streaming this, downloading it, watching live, watching later, listening live, listening later. We really appreciate it. We will be back to kick off November next Friday at 10/9 Central. Going to be fun. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, remember, rotoviz.com/podcast or this FFPC YouTube channel. You can watch my interview with Jared Hines, who is in the top 30 in the Football Guys Players Championship, was in the top 10 the previous week, and he's got a lot of teams in contention. A lot of great advice from him this past week on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, so check that out as well. Now, in case you missed it, I hosted the the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, which I do every Wednesday night from 10 to midnight on the Better Sports Network app, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We had Adam Krautwurst from the Draft Sharks Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast. We will do that show again this coming Wednesday from 10 to midnight. Extra special co-host for that as well, so make sure you're tuning in for that as well. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose 10 players if you want to play the slim. Just choose 12 players if you want to play with the kickers and defenses. We encourage both. And as long as you're picking one player per team, you'll not only be in contention for as much as $2,500, but a free 2023 FFPC main event entry as well. You can play for $1 million this year. And all you got to do is enter $200 into a 10-team format. You beat those other 9 owners. Boom. You're in the FFPC main event for next year. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified on this YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. And remember, the more you do that, the better the content gets, the less you see of me, and the more you see of great fantasy football players championship high stakes players that are offering their advice each and every week, year round, here on this FFPC YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for watching. Certainly appreciate it. Your weekend officially, your Halloween weekend, happy Halloween, everybody. Weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Hey, one other thing, ladies and gentlemen, before I let you go, as I cradle my trophy, which I haven't done in like 2 years for this. Should have won it last year, but I didn't because my team wasn't as good. We have a 9:30 a.m. kickoff on Sunday. I know I'm going to catch hell for this because I didn't include it in the FFPC email that went out today, but 9:30 a.m. kickoff from London, Broncos and Jaguars. So make sure if you want your Broncos and Jaguars, they're in on Saturday night or super early Sunday morning. Otherwise, if you want them out, take them out on Saturday night or take them out again, super early Sunday morning. This is your final warning on that as well. I don't know how much Broncos and Jaguars are figuring in to your championship plans, but sometimes if you don't want them playing, you got to get them out. So make sure you're doing that, ladies and gentlemen. Final warning. Thanks so much. Your Halloween weekend is underway. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.